fact that this past weekend, a doomsday comet zipped right by the planet Earth, and some people fear it could be a harbinger of doomsday itself. Well, astronomers have been tracking that comet, and their basic attitude is, what's all the fuss about? It's no doomsday comet. It's basically a dud.
And our newest show, Honesty Without Fear, the Whistleblower Radio Hour with Steve Cohn and Jane Turner.
This is 1 hour of progressive radio set aside for whistleblowers, where the public can learn about the contributions and what whistleblowers are saying about the major issues facing our country today, where whistleblowers can learn about their rights, where the public can learn how to take action to stop the retaliation.
Listen live or anytime on the archives at prn.fm. The Progressive Radio Network is moving forward, and we hope you're coming with us.
You're listening to the #1 internet radio station for progressive minds, the Progressive Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to A Better World with your host Mitchell J. Rabin. I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Oh God, Mozart inspires me literally every single time I hear him. And I think you'll feel that way if you listen to today's show, and even in archive, you will get to experience a sense of inspiration, not just from listening to Mozart, but our guests today. We have two luminaries in the human potential movement, and I'm very glad to have Jack Canfield and William Gladstone as our guests today, talking first and foremost about their latest book, The Golden Motorcycle Gang, A Story of Transformation. For those of you who listen to this show with any kind of regularity, you know that we seek to bring forward the sung and the unsung heroes of society. Some people have gotten into the limelight, and they are very well known, and others are doing, I will say, equally powerful work and behind the scenes. And wherever we may be in that lineup, that scale is truly important to the transformation that is taking place. So also, for those who are new to today's show, please know that we have a newsletter that goes out weekly announcing what shows we have on the weekly radio show and the weekly TV show. For those of you who received this week's newsletter, I actually need to make a little change because of a last-minute technical glitch at the TV station. So that is, instead of Jeffrey Smith being on tomorrow night on A Better World TV at 10:30 in New York City, we're instead going to have the executive director of the Institute for the Development of Education, Art, and Leisure, Natasha Kolsar, who I've had on the show a few times, up in British Columbia. So please tune in, and if you're not yet receiving these newsletters and part of A Better World community, please go to www.abetterworld.net and join the fun and the excitement. And for more excitement, and I've got to say, I'm very pleased to have both Jack and Bill on today. I've had the true pleasure and honor of meeting them both some years back. Bill Gladstone, I was actually at his house down in Virginia, which was once owned by a former United States president, as we were trying to put into place another president in a third party, natural law party that was, and the candidate at the time was John Hagelin. And Jack Canfield, such a special man, who I had the pleasure of meeting at his home a few years back in this beautiful Santa Barbara home of his, as a friend of mine and I were introducing him to an EEG device that helps us get into touch with our deeper levels of self, deeper levels of consciousness, which has been a path that both of these gentlemen, today's guests, have been on for a long time. Many of you will know Jack Canfield because he is the co-author of really a major New York Times best-selling book and series called Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and it's sold over 500 million copies in 47 languages. I wonder if that includes Yiddish, Jack. And he is also considered to be one of the United States' greatest success coaches and is the author of the bestseller, The Success Principles. He's also known because he was a major player in the film The Secret and Tapping the Source, and he's been on television and radio over 1,000 times. So maybe this is 1,001, I don't know, but I'm very glad to have you on the show today, Jack.
My pleasure to join you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me give a little bio about Bill Gladstone. Bill is very well known for his work as essentially a super agent, a literary agent, and if I get lucky one of these days, he'll represent me. But so far, it's Eckhart Tolle and Neil Donald Walsh, and he is the founder of Waterside Productions and is an author and a screenwriter himself. His film being Tapping the Source, which he's also the author of, as well as the bestseller, The 12. So, Bill, it's great to have you on the show as well.
Well, it's just a pleasure to be here, Mitchell.
Good, I'm so glad. So, you put together, both of you are just involved in the human potential movement in a very powerful way. You're out on the West Coast. I feel that you both have been involved in keeping that beautiful coast from falling in the water. And now that I've read most of this book, I should say, that I understand some of the energy behind your collective drives and how this has really come about. Jack, what is it that kind of inspired you to pen this, to put this down onto paper?
Well, it was really Bill. What happened was I had an experience when I was in graduate school of being in a class where we were asked to do a guided visualization and to go back and remember the time when we chose to become a teacher, to kind of get us in touch with our original intention. Most people went back to a summer they spent, teaching kids at a camp or during the civil rights movement, or maybe the fifth grade teacher they had that inspired them.
Yes.
And I actually went back to before I was born, which kind of shocked me. I wasn't expecting that. And here I was, part of this group of beings that were just floating through space, kind of felt like a vacation. And we looked down on Earth and went, oh my God, there's war going on down there. This was 1944, World War II was going on. And I just thought, we ought to go down and help out, figure out how to help the planet work. And so a bunch of us decided to do it, and I kind of nicknamed that group the Golden Motorcycle Gang, because everyone had a great sense of humor, very free spirit, a little bit irreverent, and so it was kind of like a group of people on Harleys riding through space.
Yes.
And I told Bill that story, and he said, you got to write a book about that. And I said, Bill, it's too personal and it's weird and whatever. And he said, no, this is great. This is going to inspire other people to get in touch with their awakening to what their life purpose was. And so finally, after I think 8 years of Bill pushing me on this,
persistent.
He finally said, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll interview you for a couple hours a day for a couple of weeks, get the key stories. I'll write up a first draft. You edit it. And I edited it, wrote some other stuff, and that's how the book came together. His novel ability and my life story. Plus, there's a kind of a, from now until December 22nd, 2012, we had to make that part up, and it really is about what we see as the positive aspect of this coming shift that's going to occur in 2012 as a end of one age, as the Mayan prophecy and many other prophecies around the world are predicted.
Yeah, right. So that is the genesis of this. coming down to earth and spending time. You know, you make a point, Jack, that I think is really salient, because as I've been reading it and the notes that came with it for we interviewers and hosts, it really suggests, in a little snippet I read regarding Barbara Marx Hubbard, that we're all in this game together. I often quote Reverend Jesse Jackson, who said, you know, we all may have come over on different boats, but we're all in the same boat now.
Oh, that's a good quote.
You know, yeah. And I feel it's really true. And, you know, Barbara made reference in your book that it will take hundreds and hundreds of leaders. But, you know, I'll tell you, I really think it's actually an entire global shift of consciousness that might really involve literally hundreds of millions, if not billions of people to bring about the new world that we really have in mind. What do you think about that?
Well, I do. Let me just say this before we go on. It feels like someone's breathing really heavy on the phone. I don't know if that's Bill or one of your engineers or what, but whoever it is.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, me too.
Are you both that excited about being on the show with me?
I think that must be what it is. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, and maybe the engineer can tune in and see if he can get to the origin of heavy breathing. Okay,
I'm not really breathing that heavily. I can't imagine it's me, but it could be.
Well, how about that 10-mile bike ride, Bill, around Cardiff by the Sea?
That's more my tennis.
Oh, yes, good.
That was yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, the engineer said it was your mic, Bill.
Oh, it is my mic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But anyway, to go back to your question, I think that there needs to be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people coming together. What I see this shift that's going to occur it's occurring now. We see it happening with the breakdown of many institutions. We see it with the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement in New York and around the world.
Yes.
That people are rising up and saying, wait a second, this isn't working. We want a better world that works for everybody, and we're moving away from greed, the corporate greed and the control of the banking system and the Wall Street people.
Yes.
Of moving from that level to a level of people working in collaboration and cooperation for the highest good of all concerned. I still think we'll have capitalism and all of that, but we'll be really thinking about how does this system work so it works for everybody, so we can have ecological sustainability, social justice, spiritual fulfillment, all of these things that everyone says they want.
Yes.
Very interestingly enough, Mitch, we just did a survey. We find that almost everyone in the world, no matter what culture they come from, wants pretty much the same thing. They want peace. They want the ability to raise their children and comfort and to have education for them and health care. People want to be able to express their essence and their gifts to the world, have a reasonable job where they can make money. And yet we still haven't been able to create that because the systems we've created used to work, but they're not working now. And so we have to shift the way we think and the way our hearts have to open in order to create this new world that we all want.
Yes. Oh, I so agree with you. In fact, I just remembered another book that you had co-authored some years back with my good friend Jackie Miller called Heart at Work,
Yes.
That book that you two put together very much speaks to this idea of a new world. And in fact, I just finished writing a chapter for her for the new version of it. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And the some aspects of what I was writing about has so much to do with what you were just articulating so nicely here, which is that we all want capitalism on one hand, yet it needs to be humanized.
Exactly.
It went totally out of whack, out of balance. We need it to be ecologized. It needs to be sustainable. It needs to be zero waste. These are, I guess I feel, both of you, that the shift we have to make is very significant, but it's not actually that far from what we feel in our hearts. It's really not far at all. Bill, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I also have the pleasure of representing people like Patricia Aberdeen, who's writing a new book on conscious capitalism.
Oh, yes, I know
really
Patricia. Yeah.
The key is consciousness.
Exactly.
Irving Laszlo talks about consciousness as the key to making real change on planet Earth. We have the technology already. We have the resources already. What we don't have is a consciousness that focuses on how to make it work for everyone, a consciousness that focuses on the present and the future rather than the past. So many of the structures which did work for, in some cases, centuries, aren't working. And instead of saying, okay, let's see what will work, we have too many people trying to put Band-Aids on systems that are broken and that from a biological point of view are unsustainable and just will eventually wither away, and it's just a matter of how long we want to prop them up and how ready we are to make real change.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is, according to you both, what does real change look like? I mean, in the book, you talk about real change and you talk about New World and participating. I'm wondering what, in a kind of a practical way to both of you, maybe Jack, you could start this, what does that look like?
Well, to me, it looks like an education system that is focused on kids learning how to communicate, learning how to clarify their values, learning how to have a vision, learning how to set goals, learning how to work as teams. Everything's based on a competition model where we've always been competing. Who gets the A, who gets the B, who's the 4.0 student, who's the 3.9 student. And I went to school that actually listed everyone's grades on a bulletin board in descending order. And so it was kind of shaming for a lot of people. And we now have a thing called cooperative education where we're learning through some of the experiments that are out there that when kids cooperate, they actually learn more when they do team reports rather than individual reports. There was just a show on CNN with Fareed Zakaria where he showed this school in California where the kids are all working on computers at their own individual pace, but when someone gets stuck, they go to the blackboard and they put their name and say, I'm stuck on such and such, help. One of the other students sees that, comes over and helps them. So we're creating a situation of cooperation and collaboration towards superordinate goals rather than competition. That's really what's needed in business. It's what's needed in the world. It's what's needed in politics, where people work together to solve problems and come up with solutions rather than become, divisive to try to win. It's not a win-lose world anymore. It's a win-win world. And evolution really occurs when crisis happens. Organisms have to respond. Like literally, bacteria at some point used up all the what they used to eat, and they started eating each other. And so what happened was some of the organisms became multiple-celled organisms in order to survive because the bigger ones wouldn't get eaten. Well, that was the beginning of what we think of as evolution that led to human beings. And the same thing is true now. We're in a situation where we have to learn to cooperate or we will kill each other.
Yes, exactly. So it really puts Darwin's thinking, as at least it's interpreted, on its head in a way. Because instead of this notion of man eat man, dog eat dog, survival of the fittest, cooperation is really the tenet of survival.
Yeah, let me say one more thing, and then Bill can jump in. There's a guy named Bruce Lipton, who you probably know.
I know him very well.
Biology of Belief, and he says that really, if you study evolution, it's the survival of the fitting innest, meaning those things that learn to fit in with the environment that's emerged. They're the ones that survive. And so whether it's the economic systems, political systems, whatever, business systems, those things that work in terms of fitting in and being part of a whole rather than trying to dominate are going to ultimately survive.
Exactly. That is such a well-made point. I've had Bruce on the show for years talking about this material.
Just some support of that, I also represent David Loy, who's a specialist on Darwin, and he's sent me manuscripts. They haven't been widely read, but that pretty much proves that Darwin was much more interested in love as an evolutionary principle rather than the survival of the fittest. He talked about survival of the fittest in 2 or 3 places. He actually referenced the power of love in evolution over 100 times.
Wow.
So I would say it's the interpretation that's come down and been used by very specific people for specific goals about the survival of the fittest being, it's a dog-eat-dog world. But that was not actually even the message of Darwin.
Very interesting. In
and
fact,
also,
yes.
Because people are always sort of say, well, what's practical? Is it practical? One of the good things about the Golden Motorcycle Gang is we're talking about things that are already happening. We do see 2012 as this tipping point where things are going to accelerate, but this has been a process of transformation that's been going on. Jack's played a leading role in it, as have many of the members of the Transformational Leadership Council, which all of whom are listed in the book. And signs are so visible. Just last night, I happened to be watching 60 Minutes. They had this wonderful little piece on Freeman Hrabowski, who's the president of University of Maryland, where they were talking exactly about, for the last 20 years, they've had a scholarship program with 73 mixed races working together in science, in which they consider all of the fellow students to also be their teachers. So this idea of cooperation is not new.
No.
It's just not been center stage.
Yep.
It's like our news media, it doesn't report on the really good things all that often.
Exactly.
It prefers to report on the disasters and where, people are acting very, very badly.
Bizarrely, exactly.
But there's a lot of positive that is already happening, and we're trying to connect through the appendices in the Golden Motorcycle Gang with all of the groups, or just a fraction in our case, but these groups in turn are connected to other groups. And we're really talking about hundreds of millions of people who are waking up to this shared vision.
Yes.
And that's really the most important aspect of writing the Golden Motorcycle Gang, and also of making this actual shift, which is not far away or pie in the sky. When you get into are the practical steps, well, they start with very simple things. And it's not that we have the solutions, it's collectively we know the solutions are within each and every one of us, particularly when it gets into the specialties. If someone's in medicine, if someone's in economics, if someone is in some other field, they will come up with the solutions, but they won't come up with those solutions unless the consciousness of the whole is given an opportunity to realize its highest and best use as part of conscious evolution, and not as survival zero-sum game, which has been the paradigm until now.
Indeed. Very well put. As I'm listening to you both speak, Jack, about Bruce's work, and you about David Loy, about whose work I am familiar, Bill. I was just thinking about an interview I did not long ago with Lynn McTaggart, who is the author of The Field, and most recently, and The Intention Experiment, and most recently, The Bond. And some of the neuroscience that she cites in that shows that we are hardwired for cooperation. This is not, as you both are saying, it's not new. No, it's ancient. That in order to have gotten where we are today, cooperation among species and, of course, intraspecies is absolutely essential. That is the key ingredient of all, and it's the bond, that feeling of love that bonds us all together, a family, siblings, parents to offspring, etc. What was that great film, The Penguins? Remember?
All right.
Happy Feet?
No. About, Jack, what I'm referring to, about the March of the Penguins.
March of the Penguins.
Yeah,
Yes.
the March of the Penguins. Do you remember how beautiful that was? Of watching after the mothers swam away, the father had to huddle closely to the offspring, so closely, and then all of the fathers had to huddle together themselves to create the body warmth in order for them themselves, as well as especially their offspring, to survive.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at evolution, it's the continual bonding together of individual units into more complex systems that allow those organisms or groups to survive. We started off as individuals, then with families, then we became clans,
Yes.
Then we became nation states, and now we're seeing that the nations can't fight with each other, so we see nations working with each other like NATO and the North American Treaty Alliance and so forth, and now we're seeing that the whole species of man has to come together and cooperate, or we will eliminate each other.
Exactly.
Whether it's through nuclear bombs or nuclear waste, or whether it's through just destroying the environment that supports us. So we literally are at a place where we have to now move to a greater level and more complex organization of systems in order to survive.
Yes, exactly true. You make reference a fair amount to the whole Mayan calendar notion of 2012. What is both of your, feelings about what that really is?
Well, I'm going to let Bill speak first to that, because he actually wrote a book about it and studied it in much greater depth than I have.
Sure.
Well,
Please,
I've
Bill.
been a student of the Mayan calendar ever since I was a little kid, actually.
Wow.
And I ended up studying anthropology, and I also happen to have been a mathematician. So of all the accomplishments of the Mayan, the most astounding is, in fact, the Mayan calendar. In the history of the world, including the Egyptians, who were mathematical geniuses, and many other civilizations, the Indian subcontinent, where mathematics was revered and proficient, no one came up with a calendar as exact as the Mayan. And as you study the Mayan calendar, there's some things that are just completely unexplainable. One is, if you combine the 6 long count calendars together, you come up with 26,000 years. No one could have possibly known 3,000 or 4,000 years ago when the Mayan calendar was created. And my belief is the Mayan calendar was actually created by indigenous peoples, pre-Mayan peoples, in the same vicinity that the Mayans ended up living. But the 26,000-year cycle happens to coincide with what is called the precession, or the wobble in the rotation of planet Earth, which is exactly 26,000 years.
The precession of the equinox.
Well, no, that's a different concept. This is a concept that we didn't even know about when you and I were in school. They've discovered that the rotation of the Earth itself wobbles. And the Earth is in a wobble format, and it takes 26,000 years for the wobble to come back to the completion of a wobble cycle. So we have this 26,000-year cycle, which none of us even knew existed until a few decades ago with modern scientific measuring instruments. And the Mayan somehow either intuited, I can't believe it's a coincidence, you can get into further afield theories, some kind of mental telepathy with planetary beings, intelligence. But there's something very interesting going on when you get to the Mayan calendar and study that calendar. Most of what has been written about the Mayan calendar is, in my opinion, fanciful. It's not based on the true science. There's very little that connects the end of the Mayan calendar with the belief that the world will end. There's one inscription only that could be interpreted to have that connection. But the reality is they are talking about the end of a calendar. And just like your car odometer, when you run out of numbers, you start over. It doesn't mean your car is going to explode.
That's just the Hollywood version, That's just all Hollywood.
But it's not just Hollywood. This is what's fascinating. There seems to be a perverse human desire for catastrophe.
Well, that's true too.
Because you have major world religions who have been prognosticating, the end of the world, and now some of these are, this is a good date. If it was good enough for the Mayans, it's good enough for me. So you do actually have. I would think it's at least $100 million, and it could be $1 billion industry going on right now of people selling bunkers and survival kits and all kinds of crazy stuff, tapping into this. So I think it's more than just Hollywood. I think there's something, unfortunately, perverse going on where people are exploiting this fear. But the reality is the Mayans themselves, and this includes not just the ancient Mayan, but today's Mayans, the Mayan elders I've interviewed, and the Mayan people, because I've traveled extensively to Izapa and Chiapas, the home of the Mayan near Guatemala, and none of the people that I spoke with are concerned about December 22nd, 2012 being the end of the physical world. They do talk about it being the end of a cycle. An energetic vibrational shift is occurring, and will officially sort of enter a new phase on that day, but only highly sensitive people will be aware of any change on that day. The change is, in fact, like the end and the beginning of any cycle, going on right now. And this is confirmed in other cultures which don't necessarily connect to that specific date. But if you look at the Vedic tradition, if you look at
there's a 26,000 cycle there too.
There is.
The yugas are 26,000.
So, and how this all happened, there's more, I don't know, was it Shakespeare? There's more to something than meets,
the eye, Horatio.
The eye. There are things we're never going to really understand, but we're starting to, and as we develop our quantum physics and our string theory, we are beginning to confirm that the ancient idea of the Akashic field, where all knowledge and all information coexists in a timeless moment, may actually be real, and somehow when we gather these kinds of information, or when our ancient civilizations gathered this type of information, they somehow were accessing the Akashic field. But that's just a theory. No one knows for sure, but it is clear that these dates have meaning, and more importantly, even if they didn't have meaning, if we can use this date to give positive meaning and make it what Barbara Marx Hubbard wants it to be, the birthday of a new era and a new consciousness and a new earth, as Eckhart Tolle talks about, then let's do it and use this date in a positive way.
Indeed, indeed. You are all listening to A Better World with Mitchell J. Rabin. I'm glad you're joining us all here on Progressive Radio Network. And we have as our guests today the authors of this very interesting book. It's a semi-fictionalized account, but not all that fictional, of the life story of Jack Canfield, written by him himself with Bill Gladstone, his good friend and colleague, called The Golden Motorcycle Gang, a story of transformation. And we've been talking in and around it, and all the subjects we're discussing are inside this really interesting book of these this group of golden motorcyclists up in the cosmos who notice this ailing planet called Earth, and feeling compassion. I don't want to say pity, but maybe a little bit, you know? Oh, those poor little earthlings. What can we do? And it's, Jack, I love the frame of it, and I really appreciate, the coming into the body. And, of course, there's that old idea of leaving behind our larger psychic collective cosmic memory of who we really are and where we really originated, and coming in once in a fairly dense 3D body, losing track of that precious thread, and doing what we're doing here, trying to make the world a better place. And I really enjoyed, following that thread throughout the book. And this whole, I want to bring something up, though, because, Bill, in your beautiful description of the Mayan calendar and some of the mathematics and all, just recently I had on Dr. Carl Kalaman, who's a good friend, who's written several books. He's actually a biologist who became a world-renowned Mayanist. He has, with some of the blessings of the Mayan elders, who I've also had on the show, redated the calendar's end to have been this past October 28th, Friday.
I am
October
aware
28th.
of his work, and I respect his work. I don't agree with it, but I think that the bottom line is the same, because we're really much more interested in the transformation and the metaphor that 2012 represents, and whether it's exactly October 28th, 2011, or December 22nd, 2012, is of less concern to me, and I'm sure if we ever get a chance to meet, we'll work out our differences and acknowledge his brilliant research. Which
all right, fine. Well, what the book does bring forward, and the point you just made about the power, and Jack, you were implying this as well, of focusing on this wonderful new birthday, Earth birthday, that we can put our energy and our focus and attention to, of something beautiful happening in the world, on Earth, among us all, and it becomes a focal point for us all to gather together, rally together, and accomplish that.
No, absolutely. I think that, part of the definition of conscious evolution, which is what Barbara Marx Hubbard is known for, is evolution by choice, not chance.
Yes.
And so we, as human beings, because of our ability for cognition and our ability to tune into our intuition, have the ability to cooperate with that which is happening and to perceive it, and then to consciously choose to cooperate with it and to create a future that is partially what's emerging and partially what we choose to create it, so that we're not victims. I think so many people, if you talk to them today, feel like they're a victim. They're a victim of the Congress that doesn't work. They're a victim of the economy that's put close to 20% of the Americans out of work, etc.
Yes.
And the reality is, we're not victims. We have the ability to choose, and so we can create the future we want together. And what's happening, I think, and why this convergence, if you want to call it, on December 22nd, which is the day after, supposedly the Mayan calendar ends. And my point of view is in the 26,000-year cycle, if you're off by 1 year, I don't think you missed it by much.
Who's counting at that point, right?
Exactly. It's like if my wife is 2 seconds late for dinner, I don't think we're going to care.
You better not.
And I think these energies started to be felt really strongly back in the 1960s. I think that was the Back to the Earth movement and the people going back to the indigenous cultures and studying with the Native Americans and so on and so forth. That it's a shift that's occurring over this time frame. But I think that having the opportunity to get together all these groups that exist around the world that are working for sustainability and social justice and economic reform, and it's an opportunity to come together and really focus on one world that works for everyone on one day, to use it as a highlight to bring our consciousness into greater harmony. And I think that there's so many projects that are working. I think I was on a call recently. It's called the Welcoming Committee for the Birthday. And Neil Donald Walsh and myself and Gene Houston and James O'Day, a number of wonderful people were on that call. And the idea being that we all have a unique role and that there are literally millions of organizations around the world that are doing good things, but we often don't know about each other.
Yes.
So we kind of feel like we're out there in the middle of nowhere, not realizing we're all connected. And there's so many people doing good things. It's heartening to know. And when you get that good news and you see all this being put together on a computer system and it'll be a website and all this stuff, it's something saying, well, wow, this really can work. Let's get on board.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's very well put. As I read even the appendices of your book, which is just really replete with good information and the names of people who are doing things to create a better world, I did notice the omission of my organization called A Better World. And I know you'll do a revision of that at some point.
We will.
But in all honesty, I really do know what you mean. You can't possibly know of all of the good works that are going on in this vast, beautiful planet of ours. And very recently, I'm going to just share a little story with you. I'm working on a kind of a green, clean tech project that would utterly, completely have world impact and change our relationship to the fossil fuel based society that we currently have. And really interesting project. And through one good fortune or another, I've brought together some parties to help fund it. And when I brought these parties together on a Skype call, both the CEO of the company with the technology and those interested in funding, I've got to tell you, every single time we have a dialogue, I feel like I'm with a group of spiritual masters. Mm-hmm. They're all businessmen. They're all entrepreneurs. They're all been involved also with the UN and largely European-based, actually. And when I get off the phone, you two, I feel like I am in a state of grace and bliss. And I think, how did this happen? This is a business meeting. This is about technical data and money and all of these highly material things. But I'm in ecstasy. And it's because of the feeling that accompanies being part of world change and world transformation. There is no greater high that I experience. I mean, certainly making money is a ball. It's wonderful. Bringing happiness to others is wonderful. And bringing happiness and a balanced ecosystem to billions is a high that I truly recommend.
No, I fully understand.
Do you know what I mean? I know you do. I'm saying this to both of you because I know your wavelength, and it's, you're there.
No, it's true. There was a book written a couple years ago called Be a Go-Giver, Not a Go-Getter. And
beautiful.
I think, part of this shift, if you will call it that, is that people are being asked to move from self-interest, which, has been the thing that really capitalism was based on. The whole, Darwinistic thing we discussed earlier was based on. Adam Smithian, yes. And what we're finding is that people are happiest when they're contributing their unique talents and gifts to the whole.
Yes.
And, musicians want to play and have people hear their music. Mechanics want to fix things and hear them running perfectly. And artists want to contribute their work and have it be seen. And doctors want to heal people. You talk to anyone in any profession why they originally went into it. Even policemen. Most of the policemen I know went into that kind of work because they really wanted to make a difference in their community. They want a safe community. And, sometimes they get overwhelmed by the reality of it and get hardened and so forth. But the original intention is to bring your gift and express it. And when we do that, every need gets met.
Yes.
And so we're really asking people to find out what is it that makes your heart sing, what is it that brings you joy, based on the principle that we do have an inborn guidance system called your level of joy. And when you do that, then we all meet the needs of the world, and we do it from love and from service rather than from fear and protection.
Yes. Yes. Oh, God, yeah. It's really true. I feel like, there really is one heart. Joseph Campbell tells this beautiful story of when two people in a New York City street are standing by the traffic light, and one starts to walk into traffic unwittingly. A total stranger will grab them by the neck, and pull them back by the shirt sleeve to pull them out of an oncoming car or bus. Mm-hmm. Total stranger. What is that biological, psychological, spiritual impulse that we all have to be looking out for one another? Mm-hmm. It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. And after you pull someone out of the street like that, you're aglow the whole day.
Yeah.
Because you did something so much more meaningful than, add to your stock portfolio or buy 10 more acres of land somewhere.
Right.
It's the thing that is most fulfilling. And I know because of the work I do, which is running groups, and people wake up to their... I have people come to my summer training, which I do, called Breakthrough to Success every year.
Yes.
And they'll come there because they want more stuff. That's a big motivation for a lot of people.
Yes.
And we do this exercise called Identifying Your Life Purpose. And when people get in touch with their life purpose, 9 times out of 10, it has nothing to do with physical abundance or manifesting that. They get things like, I want to start a camp that helps kids that have cancer, or I want to help people that have been abused sexually realize they're not damaged goods, or I want to help women become empowered. And we just see almost everyone comes up with something like that when they really go deep with it. Yeah. And then it shocks them, and then they go start doing that, and they write back, I'm so fulfilled now, I'm so happy.
God, it's so interesting. So a lot of the work you do is to help facilitate and cultivate that inner awareness in your students. Is that and clients? I mean, you are, I'd love to actually, you both made reference to the Transformational Council. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and how that's contributing to the world?
Sure, and some of the members, I mean, you probably had half of them on your show. And, you were talking about Lynn McTaggart, she's a member, Ariel Ford and Debbie Ford, and so on and so forth.
I know them well.
What happens is that I was sitting at home one day, just kind of professionally lonely. We're out there doing our work and doing my seminars, and just never have time to talk to anyone else who's doing that. So I decided to invite 30 people with names like John Gray and Stephen Covey and Hale Dwoskin from the Sedona Method, Gay Hendricks and so forth, and say, would you come to my house and let's talk about setting up an organization where we can come together on a yearly basis. We actually decided to do it twice a year, and share ideas, learn how to, figure out how to cooperate more and not compete, but do things better because we're doing them together.
Yes.
And it's now we got about 120 members from about 9 countries, including China and Singapore and Germany, the UK.
Beautiful.
With South America and so forth. And the reality is everybody is so happy that they can cooperate with each other, and there's so much love that gets shared, and so many great ideas and new projects that get birthed. And it's this, again, people coming together, and this new organization creates a more sophisticated solution than any of us could do alone. And there are tons of organizations like that. Bill's on the board of a group called the Club of Budapest.
Dr. Laszlo, right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah. And there's the Pachamama Alliance, 4 years ago, Esalen Institute, Omega, tons of things out there. And so we really believe that